The sun is no friend here. It doesn't warm you, it hunts you. Its white-hot glare pours down like molten metal, burning the air until every breath scrapes your throat like sandpaper. The horizon is nothing but a quivering mirage, a cruel trick that promises water and delivers only more emptiness. Your tongue has swollen against the roof of your mouth. Every swallow is a stab of pain, a reminder that you have nothing left to give your body but the thin, copper taste of your own blood. The leather strap of your armor digs into your shoulder, already rubbed raw, but you keep walking because to stop is to die. Around you, the other men have stopped speaking. Their lips are cracked open, eyes glazed, heads bowed like condemned prisoners shuffling to an unseen gallows. The sand crunches under your feet, but the sound feels distant, as if it belongs to someone else's body. Your vision tunnels. The shapes of your brothers in arms blur into shadows, their movements sluggish, unnatural. Somewhere in the ranks, a man stumbles. He doesn't get up. No one has the strength to help him. You can't even turn your head to look. This is not the battle they promised you when you swore your oath to Rome. This is not glory. This is a slow death in the open, under the watchful eyes of the vulture that circles above. You think of the stories they told. That Roman soldiers were forged of iron, unbreakable, the living edge of the empire's will. They never told you that iron rusts. They never told you that a soldier's life could be bled away without a single spear ever touching his flesh. Here, in the desert, the enemy is not the barbarian. It's thirst. It's hunger. It's the slow rot of the body when the empire that commands you is too far away to save you. And this is only the beginning. Because what waits beyond this march is worse. The fevers that will rip through your camp like fire, the nights of freezing wind that will turn your bones to glass, the lash of your commander's whip for the crime of collapsing when your body has nothing left. Rome's greatest soldiers didn't die in glory. They rotted away slowly. And before this story ends, you will see every cruel truth the empire buried beneath marble statues and heroic legends, truths they never wanted in your school textbooks. The Romans told you the eagle was a symbol of Rome's might, a golden predator that soared above the battlefield, watching over its legions. But out here, in the dry belly of the earth, the eagle is nothing but a shadow on the sand. It does not bring rain. It does not bring relief. Your real standard-bearer is thirst. Every drop you drink is a battle won. Every drop you lose is a step closer to the grave. In the deserts of Judea, the sun burns differently. It is not the warm glow of an Italian summer, it is a merciless blade, slicing away at your strength with every hour you march. You ration your water until your lips stick together like sealing wax. The skin on your face cracks into lines that no youth can erase. In the rocky wastes of North Africa, you dig for hours in soil that smells of heat and nothingness. The ground gives you only dust. You move on, dragging your armor like a coffin strapped to your shoulders. And yet, in the northern reaches of the empire, the story is no softer. There, the enemy is not heat, it is the endless wet. Rains that never stop. Groundwater that seeps into your boots until your skin rots. Rivers swollen from storms, their currents violent, their water brown with disease. There is water everywhere, but none of it will keep you alive for long. It's a bitter truth, a legion can die of thirst in the desert, but it can also drown in sickness in the cold, green north. Rome's engineers built aqueducts, miracles of stone and mathematics, to carry water for miles. But you, the common soldier, will almost never drink from them. Those are for the cities, for the marble baths where senators soak in perfumed steam. Out here, your aqueduct is a wineskin with its seams cracking, the leather stiffening in the heat. When the water runs out, the world becomes smaller. It narrows to a single thought: find it. Wells are dug, and they lie to you with their darkness. You lower a bucket and bring up brackish slime that tastes of salt, of rot, of slow sickness that will twist your insides until you wish for death. You learn quickly that thirst makes men dangerous. It strips away the discipline Rome is so proud of. Friends turn on each other over a skin of water. Men vanish into the dunes chasing rumors of a spring, only to be found days later, their bodies dry as parchment, their lips peeled away from their teeth in a frozen scream. Historians will tell you of the campaigns in North Africa where entire cohorts withered away without ever seeing the enemy. They will whisper of Judea, where rebels didn't need to fight, they only needed to block the wells and wait for Rome to kill itself. The generals called it supply trouble. You will call it what it is, murder by neglect. And in those moments, as your tongue lies dead in your mouth and your vision blurs into darkness, you will not think of the emperor or the Senate. You will think of a cup of water, cool and clear, the kind you could take for granted in a city, and you will hate the world for letting it be so far away. If you think dying of thirst in the middle of a military campaign is worse than being cut down in battle, then you're exactly the kind of viewer Disturbing Tale is for. Hit subscribe, and if you won't, tell me in the comments why you'd rather watch in silence while this channel slowly fades away like those forgotten soldiers. You think the worst is over when the water comes. It isn't. Thirst is a sharp pain, it cuts quick and deep. Hunger is a slower knife. It doesn't strike. It seeps. It wears you down grain by grain, hour by hour, until your body becomes a shadow of itself. Your rations arrive in sacks of coarse grain, the same every day, every week, every month. Wheat if you're lucky, barley if you're not. You grind it yourself on a stone that's worn your hands raw, mix it with what little water you can spare, bake it into bread so hard it cracks teeth. That's on a good day. On a bad day, the grain is alive. Worms, beetles, and the pale squirm of larvae writhing between kernels. You pick them out for the first few weeks. After that, you eat them without thinking. Protein, you tell yourself, even as your stomach clenches against the taste. The empire's supply lines are miracles on parchment. Straight lines and perfect timetables. But the desert does not read maps. The mountains do not care for schedules. And when the carts do not come, there is no food. Not for a day. Not for a week. In famine years, even the officers stop pretending there is enough. In the lean corners of the empire, in burned-out villages, in provinces still smoldering from rebellion, the locals have nothing to sell, nothing to steal. And so you starve. Your belt cinches tighter until the leather cracks. Your ribs carve themselves into your skin like the struts of a broken ship. The color drains from your gums until they bleed without reason. Your vision swims when you stand. The nights are colder, even in summer. Historians speak of scorbutus, scurvy, the slow destruction of flesh from the inside when your body has been too long without fresh fruit or green leaves. Archaeologists have found the bones. Roman skeletons with porous skulls and twisted rib cages, each one a silent witness to a slow, malnourished death. In later centuries, they called it pellagra, the wasting disease of those who live on nothing but grain. In your time, it has no name, only symptoms. The skin on your hands peels away, your mind slips in and out of strange thoughts, you feel hot in the cold and cold in the heat. The strongest among you hide it well at first, but hunger is a patient enemy. It does not need to fight you. It waits until you are too weak to lift your shield, too dizzy to march. Then it takes you. In the deep cold of Germania, in the burning plains of Africa, rumors spread when the famine drags on too long. Stories of men who vanish from camp. Stories of meat in the pot that no one remembers killing. You tell yourself it's not true, that your brothers wouldn't do it, but you don't look too closely when the stew tastes sweeter than usual. Morale doesn't break with a scream. It slips away with a shrug. A soldier who cannot eat cannot fight. A soldier who cannot fight cannot hope. And a soldier without hope is more dangerous to his commander than the enemy is. That is when the mutterings start. That is when the men stop looking to Rome for rescue and start looking at their officers like wolves look at a deer. And all the while, the empire writes your story in neat lines on a wax tablet: losses due to supply failure. Not starvation. Not neglect. Not the slow death you've been walking toward since the day the grain cart didn't come. You think the desert is the worst Rome can send you to. You're wrong. There are places where the sun is not your executioner, the cold is. When you march north into Germania or Britannia, you leave behind the golden light of the Mediterranean. You trade it for a sky like lead, for a wind that bites through leather and wool as if they were spider's silk. The air itself feels heavy, pressing down on your chest until every breath hurts. The cold is not a single enemy you can face with sword and shield. It is an army that invades every part of you. It begins with your fingers, stiff, slow, pale. Then your toes, burning with pain before they go numb. You tell yourself it's only temporary, that you'll warm up once the fire is lit. But out here, warmth is a rumor. The ground is frozen stone. You sleep on it anyway. The thin blankets you wrap around yourself soak through with your own breath until the fabric freezes stiff. By morning, it is like trying to fold a sheet of ice. In the damp trenches, water seeps into your boots, never drying. The skin between your toes peels away. The rot creeps up your legs, trench foot, the kind of wound you can't march on, but must, until the stench follows you with every step. Some nights, the wind screams through the camp like a living thing, rattling the tent poles, driving snow into every seam. The leather walls of your tent buckle under the weight. And when the snow stops, it's only because the air has turned so cold even the clouds have frozen. Your body burns more food in winter just to stay alive. But the rations are no larger. Hunger and cold conspire against you, draining what little strength you have left. Even those who survive the frost come away coughing, a wet, deep cough that never leaves, that shakes the body and rattles the ribs until blood flecks the spit in your hand. Winter quarters are no refuge. They are traps. The dugouts fill with the damp breath of 100 men. The air grows warm and wet, perfect for the spread of sickness. Coughs multiply, fevers pass from one man to another faster than any sword can move. Once the sickness starts, it does not stop until there are more empty mats than filled ones. The contrast haunts you, sweating under the sun in Africa until your skin blistered, and now, shivering in Germania until your bones feel hollow. Two different hells. One goal. To break you. And the cold will break you in ways the heat never could. It slows you, hardens your muscles until they cramp, numbs your fingers until you drop your spear. It's not the enemy's arrow that will kill you. It's the moment you can't close your hand around your shield because your blood has turned sluggish. Some men pray for spring. Others pray for death before it comes. You're still here, which means you're different from the average viewer who clicks away when history turns ugly. Subscribe to Disturbing Tale now, or leave a comment explaining why you'd rather keep this knowledge hidden from the world. The battle doesn't begin when you see the enemy. It begins the moment you take your first step out of camp. 30 kilometers. Sometimes more. That is the day's march. And you do not march empty-handed. On your back is the weight of Rome, 30 to 45 kilograms of iron, wood, and leather. Your shield, your spear, your short sword. The helmet that presses into your brow until your skin is rubbed raw. The tools for digging ditches and raising walls. The cooking pot you'll barely use. A week's worth of grain on your shoulder, hard and heavy in its sack. Every step grinds the straps into your flesh until they feel like they've fused with your bones. The roads are not the perfect straight lines carved on a general's map. They are a punishment in themselves. Some days, the desert stretches out before you in shimmering waves, each dune hiding the next hour's torment. Your feet sink into the sand, every step stealing twice the energy it should. The heat clings to you like a fever that will not break. Other days, you climb mountains that twist into the clouds, paths that crumble underfoot. The air thins, your lungs work harder, and the cold stings your cheeks until they split. Sometimes you are sent through swamps, where the ground swallows your boots whole. The smell of rot rises with every step, the mud sucking at you as though it means to drag you down and keep you forever. And always, there is the chance of an ambush. Arrows from tree leans, stones from ridges. Your armor will protect you for a moment, but it cannot protect you from exhaustion. The march doesn't wound you all at once. It cuts you in pieces. First, the blisters, raw, open, hot with infection. Then the swelling in your ankles and knees from the constant strain. Sometimes a stone twists your foot the wrong way, and you hear the crack before you feel the pain. If you are lucky, it's only a sprain. If you are not, it's the end. There is no place for the injured. A man who falls behind is a man who will never be seen again. If the enemy finds you, your death will be quick. If nature finds you first, it will be slow. Alone in the wild, without food, without fire, you will last no more than a few days, long enough to feel every moment of your ending. The truth no general wants to record is this: more men die on the road than in the clash of battle. Marching claims you in silence, without glory, without the honor of a final stand. It wears you down until your body no longer belongs to you, until the only thing you are is a weight for someone else to carry. By the time you reach the battlefield, you are already half a corpse. You can survive the march. You can outlast the cold. You can endure hunger. But you cannot escape the filth. Bathing is a luxury. Something whispered about when the camp is still, the way starving men talk about feasts. Days, weeks, months pass without a drop of water touching your skin except the sweat that soaks your tunic until it stiffens. The grime is part of you now, a second skin that itches and burns in the heat and freezes hard in the cold. When a bathhouse appears in a permanent camp, it is a rare mercy, but even mercy can kill. The pools fill quickly with men desperate to feel clean, their bodies scoured raw by weeks of dirt. The water clouds almost instantly, not with dust alone but with blood from open sores, with the invisible threads of disease. You do not notice the fever until it's too late. In the quiet corners of ancient latrines, archaeologists have found the remains of your other companions, lice, fleas, and the eggs of intestinal worms so numerous they could only have lived in every gut. You carry them without thought, scratching until your skin breaks, feeding them with your blood and your food. They are your unseen squad, closer to you than your brothers in arms, and far more loyal. The sickness comes in waves. Dysentery that grips your gut like a fist, draining you until you're too weak to stand. Typhus that burns you alive from the inside, the rash creeping over your skin like a map of your final days. These diseases are not loud. They do not charge you in open battle. They slip between your fingers at night and take you while you sleep. It is the invisible enemy that Rome cannot fight, not with steel, not with discipline, not with gods. The same empire that can build aqueducts to carry water for miles cannot keep its soldiers alive long enough to drink it clean. And so you rot, not in the heat of battle, but in the stinking shadows of your own camp. You've now seen that the real killer of Rome's armies wasn't war, it was filth and neglect. If you can stomach these truths, subscribe to Disturbing Tale. If you can't, explain in the comments why you'd rather stay in the dark. You rise with the horn before the sun touches the horizon. Not because you want to, because you must. There is no choice here. The day does not ask you what you wish to do. It tells you. It tells you to train until the weight of your shield feels like a part of your arm. It tells you to march when your legs are still aching from yesterday. It tells you to dig trenches in soil that resists every strike of your shovel. And when the training is done, the work begins. The camp does not build itself. You cut timber, haul stones, raise walls that you may never see again because tomorrow, you might tear them down to march somewhere else. The same walls, the same towers, the same ramparts, over and over, until your mind cannot tell one place from another. Guard duty is worse. Standing in the dark, holding your spear as the cold seeps through your armor, staring into the black where your imagination lives. You hear things out there, the snap of a branch, the low cry of something that might be human, might not. Your eyes invent shapes that move. Your mind whispers about the enemy, about wolves, about spirits that do not belong to men. There is no privacy. You sleep shoulder to shoulder, eat elbow to elbow. Every thought you have is drowned out by the sound of others breathing, coughing, muttering in their sleep. Even your dreams are not your own. Far from home, the distance becomes a weight heavier than any pack. You begin to forget the faces you left behind. You imagine them as they were, not knowing if they still are. The letters from home, if they come at all, are months old, news of births you will never witness, of deaths you cannot mourn. And when the loneliness grows too sharp, you turn to the same things all soldiers do, superstition. You look for omens in the sky, in the way the birds fly, in the sound of the wind. You tie small charms to your armor, not because they work, but because doing nothing feels worse. You avoid certain paths because someone said a curse was laid there. You listen to stories about the restless dead in these foreign lands and pretend not to believe them, but you do. It is not just the enemy that wears you down. It is the sameness, the endless repetition. The sense that you are trapped in a loop that has no ending, no escape. The battles are not the worst part. The waiting is. The constant readiness for something that may not come until tomorrow, or next week, or never. And in the silence between commands, when you are left alone with your thoughts, you begin to realize the truth: Rome does not own just your body. It owns your mind. You quickly learn that the empire does not keep its legions together through loyalty alone. It keeps them together through fear. Every order is not just a command, it is a threat in disguise. The officers do not need to remind you what happens when a soldier disobeys. You have seen it. Flogging is the most common. A leather whip studded with bone or metal, swung until skin splits and blood spatters the ground. The lash doesn't just cut flesh, it takes something from the man's spirit. You watch the strongest soldiers. Men who faced enemy blades without blinking, weep like children under the lash. Some never recover. Lose a piece of your gear, a helmet, a sword, and you may lose more than your pride. The punishment could be loss of rations, the slow death of an empty stomach while the men around you eat. Or you may be forced to stand for hours in the sun with your arms raised, until they tremble and burn and you collapse in the dirt. And then there is the word whispered with dread: decimation. One soldier in every 10, chosen by lot, beaten or executed in front of the others, not because he is guilty, but because someone must pay for the failure of all. The survivors never forget the sound. The thud of clubs on bone. The final gasp of a man you trained beside, marched beside, shared your bread with. You live on knowing you could have been him. Some commanders were known for cruelty so severe their names became curses among the men. They punished not to correct, but to break. A soldier who stumbled on a march might be forced to carry stones twice his own weight. One who spoke out of turn might be made to stand guard for days without rest. Mercy was a stranger in these camps. Yes, it kept the lines straight and the shields locked in battle. Yes, it forged obedience. But it also planted seeds of despair. Men began to see the enemy not across the battlefield, but in the tent of their own commander. For some, the only escape was to run. Desertion meant death if caught, but for those who succeeded, it meant freedom, even if freedom was only a few weeks before a barbarian spear found them. Others chose a quicker end. A blade to the throat, a jump from the palisade, a slip into the river at night. Anything to stop the endless cycle of punishment and fear. The army called it discipline. The soldiers called it survival, until they couldn't call it anything at all. If you believe history should expose cruelty instead of hiding it, then prove it. Subscribe to Disturbing Tale. And if you don't, I want to read your excuse in the comments while the rest of us face the truth. You tell yourself it will all be worth it when it ends. That one day you will march home, lay down your weapons, and live as a free man. Rome promises you land. Rome promises you gold. Rome promises you a life after the war. But promises are easy to make when the man making them will never have to keep them. When your service ends, if it ends, you are not the same man who left home. You have marched across continents. You have starved, frozen, bled. You have carried the dead weight of friends on your back and left others to rot where they fell. And now, your body is a collection of old wounds and lingering pain. The scroll says you are owed land. But the land is a strip of wilderness in some far province you have never seen, surrounded by people who do not want you there. It is soil that must be cleared by your own crippled hands, plowed with a back bent from years under armor. The money, if it comes at all, arrives late and in pieces, never enough to live on, never enough to match the cost you paid. And what can you do with peace, when all you have known is war? You cannot farm without collapsing from the old break in your leg. You cannot sleep without waking to phantom screams. You do not speak the language of merchants or craftsmen, your only trade is killing. Some try to return to their families, only to find them gone. Some discover their wives remarried, their children grown to call another man father. For others, there is no home left at all, villages burned, towns rebuilt without them. So you drift. You beg in the streets where senators pass without meeting your eyes. You sell your sword to anyone who can pay, a petty warlord, a merchant caravan, a city guard. And for some, the line between mercenary and criminal blurs until it disappears. Rome records your name once, when you enlist. When you die, it will not appear again. No stone. No marker. Just another forgotten veteran, lost in a city that used you until there was nothing left. And as you sit in the shadow of a marble temple, watching the citizens pass, you understand the last truth. The betrayal did not happen when you came home. It happened the moment you left. You have walked the length of a Roman soldier's life now. You have felt the thirst that cracked lips and split tongues. You have carried the hunger that hollowed cheeks and stole the strength from limbs. You have stood in the cold that turned flesh to stone and bone to glass. You have tasted the rot of disease, the crawling bite of parasites, the fever that burned through whole cohorts. You have lived the monotony that ground away thought and hope until there was nothing left but obedience. You have felt the sting of the lash, the dread of decimation, the shadow of commanders whose cruelty outlasted the battle. And you have returned home to a promise broken before it was ever made. Rome tells its story in marble and gold, in the arches that still stand, in the statues that still stare down at us as if their eyes can see across centuries. It tells you about glory. It tells you about conquest. It tells you about empire. It does not tell you about the men who died unnamed in the desert because a water cart was late. It does not tell you about the soldiers who starved in sight of fertile fields they were forbidden to touch. It does not tell you about the winters that froze the marrow in their bones, or the summers that burned the life from their blood. It does not tell you about the coughs that never stopped, the fevers that emptied tents faster than any enemy attack. It does not tell you about the minds that broke in the silence between orders. It does not tell you about the veterans who returned not to victory, but to poverty and obscurity. The greatness of Rome was not carved by the hands of gods. It was built on the backs of men who suffered without choice, whose lives were consumed in the service of an empire that would forget their names the moment they were gone. This is the truth that is not in your school textbooks. The truth that is not recited under the arches or in the shadow of the Colosseum. The truth that is buried in shallow graves beneath foreign soil. And now you have heard it. You cannot unknow it. You've made it to the end, something most won't do. If you won't subscribe to Disturbing Tale after hearing this, I want you to tell me why in the comments. Because silence means you're letting these soldiers be forgotten all over again.